Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be writing this. But after everything that's happened, I need to get this off my chest. My name is Emily, I'm 28, and I have a twin brother, Noah. Growing up, my parents treated us very differently. Noah was the golden child, the smart one, the talented one, the one destined for great things. Me? I was the disappointment, the afterthought. I can't remember a time when they didn't compare us. If Noah aced a test, my parents would brag about it for weeks. If I got the same grade, barely a nod of acknowledgement. But if I ever slipped up, even once, it was like I had personally ruined their lives. Birthdays? Noah had these huge parties, stacks of presents, and a house full of people. Meanwhile, I got whatever was left. One year, they actually forgot to get me a cake. I remember standing there in the kitchen while my mom sighed and cut me a piece of Noah's leftover cake. Here, she said, like she was doing me a favor. I laughed it off at the time, pretended it didn't bother me. But I still remember the way the candlelight flickered against the kitchen wall, the way my stomach twisted as Noah and his friends laughed in the other room, like I wasn't even there. The only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was my grandmother, Marion. She wasn't around all the time, but when she was, she made sure I felt seen. She'd bring me little things, my favorite chocolate, a new book, just to remind me she was thinking about me. But more than that, she listened. When I told her I wanted to join the track team, she smiled and said, "You'd be amazing at that, sweetheart." My parents, on the other hand? No. Focus on school, like Noah. I fought back once. Just once. "But I am doing well in school," I had said, voice shaking. My dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. Not well enough. By the time we were teenagers, things only got worse. I was social, made friends easily, had a life outside of our house. Noah didn't. He struggled with people, and I could feel his resentment growing. It boiled over on our 14th birthday. Noah's friends didn't show up. Not one. Meanwhile, my friends took me out for ice cream, showered me with gifts, made me feel like I actually mattered for once. That night, Noah sat at the dinner table, silent, while our parents bent over backwards trying to comfort him. "It's okay, sweetheart," my mom said, rubbing his arm. "People are just busy." But he didn't look at her. He looked at me. And that was the moment everything changed. After that, he started lying about me. At first, it was small things, telling my parents I was rude, that I slacked off, that I was sneaking out at night. But then it escalated. He started hurting himself, punching his own arms, making himself bruise, then telling people I did it. He told everyone I was violent, that I lashed out when no one was watching. At first, I thought no one would believe him. But my parents? They were already primed to see me as the problem. One day, I got called to the principal's office. I didn't even know why until I walked in and saw Noah sitting there, a black eye forming. My stomach dropped. My parents were there too. My mom was crying, my dad's jaw was tight, his arms crossed. The principal looked at me, his face unreadable. "Emily, do you have anything to say for yourself?" I blinked. What? Noah sniffled, his voice small, perfectly practiced. I don't want her to get in trouble. She's my sister." My mom sobbed harder. I felt like I was drowning. I turned to my parents. "You don't actually believe this, do you?" My dad just shook his head. "We're disappointed in you, Emily." Disappointed. I stood there, stunned, as the principal told me I was suspended for 10 days. I lost my spot on the track team. My friends started pulling away. And when I got home, my dad was packing my things. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "Dad, what are you doing?" He didn't even look at me. "You can't stay here anymore." My heart started pounding. "Wait, you're kicking me out? Over Noah's lies?" My mom just looked away, like she couldn't even face me. Noah stood in the hallway, watching. He wasn't smiling, but I could see it in his eyes, that satisfaction. I turned to him, voice shaking. "Tell them the truth." He tilted his head slightly, pretending to think about it. Then he shrugged. "Why would I lie?" And that was it. That was all it took. I begged. I cried. I grabbed my dad's arm and pleaded, "Please, please don't do this." He shook me off like I was nothing. "If your grandmother wants you, she can have you," he said. "You're not our problem anymore." My grandmother came that night. She didn't say much, just walked inside, looked my parents dead in the eyes, and said, "If you ever contact her again, I'll make sure you regret it." Then she helped me grab my things, guided me into the car, and we drove away. I didn't cry. I just stared out the window, watching the house I had grown up and shrink in the distance. And I told myself one thing. One day, I'll prove them wrong. I just never expected them to come crawling back. It happened a few days ago. I was in the middle of working on a project when my phone buzzed 6 missed calls from Mom. For a second, my heart clenched. My mind went to the worst possible place. Grandma. Was she okay? Was something wrong? But then I saw the text. Mom, Emily, sweetheart. We saw you on TV. We're so proud of you. Call us back when you can. I stared at the screen, my whole body going cold. It had been years since I heard from them. Not when I got into college. Not when I graduated. Not when I built my own business from nothing. But now, suddenly, they cared? I almost ignored it. I should have ignored it. But some stupid, tiny part of me, the part that had spent too many years begging for their approval, wanted to know why they were really calling. So, against my better judgment, I called back. The second my mom picked up, her voice was dripping with fake warmth. Emily. Oh, honey, it's so good to hear your voice. I didn't respond. I just waited. She let out a nervous little laugh. We saw your interview. You looked so professional. Your father and I were just saying how proud we are. I let out a short, humorless breath. That's funny, because the last time I saw you, you were literally throwing my stuff out of the house. There was a pause. Then my dad's voice came through, deep, steady, practiced. We were just giving you time to figure things out. I scoffed. You mean giving me time to disappear? Another pause. My mom cleared her throat. Well, the important thing is, we're talking now. And, sweetheart, we were thinking since you're doing so well now, maybe you'd like to help us out a little. As a family. There it was. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly. Help you out? The house needs some work, Dad said. It's falling apart, really. And since you're in a good place financially, we thought. I laughed. Sharp, bitter. You thought what? That I'd just hand over money to the people who abandoned me? Emily, Mom said, her voice slipping into that old, guilt-tripping tone. We took care of you for 16 years. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. No, you didn't, I snapped. Grandma did. She's the only reason I even had a chance. You threw me away the second Noah cried about a fake bruise. Silence. Then my dad sighed. You're being selfish. Oh, there it was. That word. The word they used every time I tried to stand up for myself. I felt a familiar heat rise in my chest, the same feeling I had as a kid, trying to defend myself against Noah's lies, against the walls of disbelief my parents built around me. But this time, I was done. I took a breath, forcing my voice to stay even. You want my help? Fine. I'll do it. But on one condition. My mom perked up instantly. Of course, sweetheart. Anything. I smiled. She had no idea what was coming. You tell everyone the truth, I said. In front of the whole family. Admit that Noah lied. Admit that you kicked me out over nothing. Own up to the fact that you destroyed your own daughter's life for a boy who manipulated you. Silence. Then my dad let out a sharp breath through his nose. That's ridiculous. Mom's voice wavered. Emily, there's no need to rehash the past. We can move forward. No, I said firmly. That's my deal. You tell the truth, or you never call me again. The silence stretched so long, I could almost hear the tension through the phone. Then my dad's voice, low and furious. We are your parents. You don't get to make demands like this. Oh, I do, I said, feeling a calm settle over me. Because you need me. And I don't need you. I heard my mom inhale sharply, like she was about to cry, about to launch into some long-winded speech about family loyalty. But before she could, I ended the call. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. I should have felt victorious. Powerful. Instead, I just felt tired. I wanted to move on. I really did. But then, Noah texted me. Noah, you're so dramatic. They told me about your little condition. You realize they'll never do it, right? They never cared about you, and they never will. Just move on. Stop acting like a victim. Also, you're unmarried and childless, so maybe you should stop hoarding money and do the right thing. Help them out. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. After all these years, he still thought he could control the narrative. I gripped my phone so tightly my fingers ached. I should have ignored him. I should have let it go. But I didn't. Instead, I did something that changed everything. I wrote an email. I sent it to everyone. My parents. My relatives. Old family friends. In it, I told them everything. The lies. The manipulation. The way my parents threw me away without a second thought. And at the end of the email, I attached a screenshot of Noah's message. Then, with a deep breath, I hit send. And waited for the explosion. The explosion was immediate. The next morning, my phone blew up. Dozens of missed calls. Texts from numbers I didn't even recognize. And then, the emails started. Some were from relatives, people who had always sided with my parents, people who never bothered to ask for my side of the story. Now, some of them were apologizing. Others were in shock. Emily, I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry for not reaching out before. Is this real? Did Noah really lie about all of it? I feel sick. Your parents made us believe you were dangerous. I can't believe we fell for it. But the best ones? The ones from people who used to know Noah. I always knew something was off about him. He did the same SHT to me in college. Twisting the truth, making himself the victim. I remember when he told everyone you were violent. Jesus. I feel so stupid now. The more I read, the more something inside me shifted. For years, I thought my story ended in defeat. That Noah had won. That I would always be the outcast, the liar, the girl no one believed. But now, people were finally seeing the truth. And then, Noah saw it too. At 8:12 a.m., his name popped up on my screen. One final email. The subject line was just one word. Congratulations. I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I opened it. Noah. Wow. You really went all out, huh? You just couldn't let it go. You always had to be the center of attention. I don't know what you think you accomplished, but let me tell you something. You didn't win. You just made yourself look pathetic. You're still the same weak little girl crying for sympathy. And guess what? Mom and Dad still love me more. They always will. Enjoy your little moment. It won't last. I read it once, then twice, and then I laughed. Not because it was funny, not because it didn't hurt, but because it was so damn predictable. Even after all this time, he was still that scared little boy, lashing out because he couldn't stand that I had something he didn't. Friends, success, a life outside of him. And that would burn him alive. I closed the email. I didn't respond. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to. The silence that followed was almost unsettling. For years, Noah had thrived on attention, on control, on twisting the truth in his favor. I expected more from him. Another email, another pathetic attempt to gaslight me into believing I was the problem. But after that last email, nothing. No texts. No calls. No desperate attempts to turn people against me. And my parents? Radio silence. I should have felt victorious. After all these years, I had finally taken back control. But instead, I just felt drained. Like I had spent so long fighting a battle that, now that it was over, I didn't know what to do with myself. Then, 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then another call came. And another. Finally, curiosity got the best of me. I answered. A woman's voice came through, hesitant. Emily. I frowned. Who is this? A pause. Then, softly. It's Hannah. Hannah. My ex-best friend. I hadn't spoken to her in over a decade, not since high school, not since she turned on me when Noah started spreading his lies. I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause. She exhaled, like she was nervous. I don't know if I should be calling you, but I saw your email. A tight, bitter feeling settled in my chest. And I needed to tell you something. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Then, after a moment, she rushed out the words. He did it to me too. My stomach dropped. What? She let out a shaky breath. A few years after you left, Noah and I started hanging out more. At first, I thought maybe I misjudged you. Maybe he was the better friend. But then I started noticing things. He lied. About everything. Small stuff at first, twisting stories, making himself the victim. And then, one day, he told people I stole money from him. I felt like I was going to be sick. I didn't, she added quickly. But he had people believing I did. And when I tried to defend myself, he told everyone I was just like Emily, jealous, manipulative, a liar. He ruined me, just like he did to you. I swallowed hard, gripping the phone. And then, finally, I said what had been burning inside me for years. You believed him over me. A long, painful silence. I know, she whispered. And I'm so sorry. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. A part of me wanted to hang up, to tell her it was too late, that I didn't care. But another part, the part that had once loved her like a sister, just felt tired. So I sighed and said, yeah, me too. We didn't talk long after that. But when I hung up, my mind was spinning. Noah did it again. He didn't stop at me. He found someone new to destroy. And who knew how many more? I sat there for a long time, staring at my laptop. Then, before I could overthink it, I opened a blank document. And I started writing. I wrote everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every scar. Not for revenge, but for closure. And when I finished, I stared at the words on the screen, words that told a story I had carried for too long. Then, with a deep breath, I hit publish. The fallout was immediate. I didn't expect my post to gain much attention. I thought a few people, maybe some old classmates, maybe a couple of distant relatives, would read it and move on. But within hours, my inbox was flooded. Messages from strangers. People who had never met me, but had lived through the same nightmare. Siblings cast aside for the golden child. Scapegoats who had spent years fighting to be heard. Some of them were crying. Some were furious on my behalf. And then, something even bigger happened. People from our hometown started commenting. I always thought something was off about Noah. He was always playing the victim. I remember when he told everyone Emily hit him. I can't believe I bought that story. Holy SHD, I went to high school with you. I had no idea this was happening behind the scenes. The more I read, the more something inside me shifted. For years, I thought my story had ended in defeat. That Noah had won. That I would always be the outcast, the liar, the girl no one believed. But now, people were finally seeing the truth. And then, Noah saw it too. At 8:12 a.m., his name popped up on my screen. One final email. The subject line was just one word. Congratulations. I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I opened it. Noah. Wow. You really went all out, huh? You just couldn't let it go. You always had to be the center of attention. I don't know what you think you accomplished, but let me tell you something. You didn't win. You just made yourself look pathetic. You're still the same weak little girl crying for sympathy. And guess what? Mom and Dad still love me more. They always will. Enjoy your little moment. It won't last. I read it once. Then twice. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Not because it didn't hurt. But because it was so damn predictable. Even after all this time, he was still that scared little boy, lashing out because he couldn't stand that I had something he didn't. Friends. Success. A life outside of him. And that would burn him alive. I closed the email. I didn't respond. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to. A month passed. Then two. And just like that, the chaos settled. My parents stopped calling. The angry texts from my father, the desperate voicemails from my mother, they just stopped. Maybe they finally realized I wasn't going to cave. Maybe they were too embarrassed to keep begging after I exposed everything. Or maybe, and this was the most satisfying thought of all, they had to finally sit with the consequences of their own actions. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was a stranger. And Noah? He disappeared too. No more emails. No more half-assed attempts to get under my skin. I imagined him, sitting in our childhood home, seething with rage that for once, his lies hadn't worked. That people weren't falling for his act anymore. I could almost feel his frustration, the way his hands probably clenched into fists, the way his mind scrambled for a way to twist the story back in his favor. But it was too late. And the best part? I didn't care anymore. For so many years, my life had been shaped by him, by the damage he caused, by the shadows he cast over me. Every choice I made, every success I achieved, I always had that voice in the back of my mind whispering, would they be proud of me now? But I didn't need their pride, their love, their validation. I had built something without them. And that was worth more than anything they could ever give me. One night, I was sitting on my grandmother's porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks, the air warm and still. She sat next to me, sipping her tea. After a moment, she said, "You look lighter." I smiled. "I feel lighter." She nodded, as if she had known this moment was coming all along. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "Not just for what you've accomplished, but for how far you've come." And for the first time in my life, that was enough.